Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Zardozi, and I'm here today with a new video on a show that I've come across quite recently called Droners. It's about time I upload something to this channel, by the way. It's been like nearly a year since I uploaded anything, so I'm not particularly active on the internet in general, to be honest, but lately I've had an urge to put my creative potential into something, and that something right now is going to be a review for this show that you see right in front of you. I found it pretty fascinating and think it's definitely worthy of a review on my channel, so I'm going to waste no time and I'm going to dive right into this. Let's go! Droners is a fairly new show, having only been released near the end of 2020. It's a French cartoon, made by Cyber Group Studios, and is most well known in France, but currently is sparsely known elsewhere in the world and remains quite obscure and overlooked. It's about drone racing, with a futuristic theme combined with a tropical and kind of an aquatic aesthetic. This world is full of people who fly these drones competitively, known as droners. Together they live in the world of Terraqua, a world made almost entirely of water with a few small islands and archipelagos. One of these islands, Nui, is where the Whale Cup is being held, hosted by Wyatt Whale, this guy. Not only does he host the Whale Cup, but he is also the founder of Whale Corp, a company that aims to create eco-friendly technology and help save the planet and its rising sea levels. In particular, and most relevant to the show, are the drones he manufactures that are used for the races. Each drone is powered by a genie, which are these little guys that are like flying electric eels. Wyatt has a competitor, and that's Govinda Teach, this lady. She's the founder of Teach Tech, a sinister and far less environmentally friendly tech manufacturer who creates drones not fueled by genies but by nucleum, which is harmful to the environment. But that's just the premise of the show. I haven't even delved into the main characters, and there's so much more story elements each episode has to offer. This show is primarily centered around three characters: Korto, Enki, and Mouse. Together, they are Team Tiki. They have the most screen time, and you will always see them racing an opponent team in almost every episode. Korto is our main character. She's the pilot for the Tikis. She flies their drone, named Mororo, and corresponds with her genie, named Oro, during each race. She can give Oro various commands, such as drone load to start the drone up, and Oro will follow the command. Turbo boost is often heard as well, and a few other commands. Korto is very hot-headed and the most confident, most forward member of the Tikis, always determined to win every race, and will go to extreme lengths to ensure a victory, even so far as sometimes not listening to the advice of her fellow teammates and getting ahead of herself. But she is usually well-meaning, and she cares deeply for her friends, family, and her island. Enki is the engine nerd for the Tikis. He is often looking at the technical aspects of each race, and will offer guidance to Korto, giving her instructions and directions to follow in order to help her navigate through some of the trickier parts of the race course. He is very committed and will typically go to great lengths, sometimes pulling all-nighters just to find ways to overcome obstacles on the race course. He's quite timid and comes off it a little reserved and nervous at times, but he's probably the most gentle and sensible of the trio. Mouse is the mechanic for the Tikis, and from watching this show a lot of the time, it seems like there isn't a whole lot of difference between the mechanics and the engine nerds for most of the teams. Like, they're kind of interchangeable. Both are the brains of the team and work behind the scenes planning all the technological and theoretical work needed to win the race. But anyways, Mouse is very passionate about the hands-on work, and will often do maintenance on Mororo during pit stops, and in some episodes she applies upgrades and moderations to Mororo in ways she deems to be most helpful. Mouse cares a lot about her teammates, perhaps a little too much. She's often concerned about anything going wrong, and tends to clash with Korto occasionally, their personalities being quite opposite to one another, Korto being very daring and risky, and Mouse being very cautious and protective. Another thing worth noting, Mouse is a shore scrubber. These are people who scavenge the beaches and oceans for scraps and random parts that can be added to a drone and used to a team's advantage. So yeah, the three main characters, Korto, Enki, and Mouse, are Team Tiki, and are the main characters of the show. But there are many other characters, and 8 teams in total, including Team Tiki. All these teams and their members have their own stories. and most episodes will focus on a particular team, and throughout the episodes you will get to learn more about the other characters and their interactions with the Tikis, as well as compete against them in the races. The other teams are the Pirates, the Starfish, the Mirages, the Tau Twins, the Bees, the Sirens, and the Cold Kings. The episodes are about 20 minutes long and usually follow a formula. The first few minutes of the episode will show the Tikis competing against another team mid-race, often losing due to a specific obstacle. Then the middle portion of the episode will focus on the Tikis working to overcome the obstacle that caused them to lose the race. And we also see a lot of social interactions between the Tikis and the show's secondary characters in this part of the episode. And then usually in the last third of the episode there will be a rematch race and the Tikis always win. The racing segments are where all the action is, and you will see how intricate the racetracks can be and how much the teams will have to navigate through, from piloting underwater to making sharp turns and flying in loops and bypassing the myriad of obstacles unique to each track. Episodes often focus on things like teamwork, overcoming fears, sabotage, betrayal, social ostracization, manipulation, jealousy, cooperation, earning trust, and even relationships. All themes that are fairly common in a lot of shows, but Jonas portrays these pretty well. Some examples. In one episode, Mouse's father learns that his daughter is partaking in competitive drone racing, and sails to her from another land called Paroa, and takes her home with him, very much against her will in an act of overprotective discipline. As Mouse opens up to her father while the pair are shore scrubbing, she is able to convince her father that he can trust her, that she is responsible and mature, and that being a drone mechanic is her calling. Other examples are the relationships some of the characters have with each other and how this affects the competition. Cordo has a thing for Sun, the pilot of the Tau Twins. In one episode, the Tikis, the Tau Twins, and the Sirens all have to race against each other to catch an egg and bring it to the goal. Mina, the pilot for the Sirens, knowing she has competition, decides to pull a sinister stunt before the race by trying to create turbulence between Cordo and Sun. She does this by gaining Sun's full and undivided attention. In the episode I'm referring to, she purposefully walks into Sun and trips over him, then asks for his help, taking advantage of his willingness to help those in need. As Sun aids Mina, her accomplices take photographic evidence and then send this to Cordo without context to imply that Sun likes Mina more than Cordo. This breaks her heart and leaves her grief-stricken and tense when it comes to the race. But as the race progresses, the truth eventually surfaces, and Sun and Cordo are able to rekindle their relationship and work together to stop the Sirens from winning the race. The other significant relationship in the show is between Enki and Flora, the pilot for the Bees. There are a few episodes that focus on them, in particular one where, despite being competing teams, everyone works together to find a cure for their genies, which end up having a bad reaction to a pollen present on the racecourse. And in another episode, Enki becomes so distracted with trying to fit in with the other teams and overcome his social quirks after being rejected from a party that he loses focus on working as the Tiki's engine nerd, but Flora is able to help him find his feet and gain confidence. Some characters are pretty hostile towards the Tikis. They have their fair share of enemies, most notably the Cold Kings and the Mirages, and of course Govinda Teach herself. There's another character who's a recurring villain throughout the show, this guy named Chicane, who is somewhat of an infamous bad guy who resides in Paroa. He likes to play dirty tricks on people and has a knack for manipulating and intimidating others. Chicane competes against the Tikis a couple of times, but the Tikis always manage to show him who's the real boss around here. I think I've talked enough about the characters for now. I need to talk about the other elements this show presents. The animation, the writing, the music, the voice acting. And I must be honest, I think all of it is really good, especially the animation. It's what lured me into watching this show to begin with. It is simply immaculate, beautiful, pristine and vibrant. Like it's almost unmatched, and I almost never see visuals this amazing. That said though, the animation bears a strong resemblance to Dofus, another French animated show but a bit older than Jonas, as it was airing on TV in France around the first half of the 2010s. Dofus also boasts fantastic animation with very similar aesthetics as seen in Jonas. I don't quite know how to explain it. I guess both shows have this very brisk, clean, and polished look to them, and I reckon they share similarities to each other, which I think is pretty neat. Dofus is also definitely worth checking out. It's a fantastic show. I watched it a couple of years ago and loved everything it had to offer. But anyways, back to Jonas. Continuing with discussing the show's elements, focusing on now on the writing. The script for the show overall is fine, and much of the dialogue appropriately fits the characters to a T. There is humour sprinkled around here and there. There's frequent jokes pertaining to aquatic and oceanic things, like for example, Oro will grouch about almost being sliced into sushi after Kordo flies Maroro through a dangerous obstacle on the racecourse, or Enki will put himself down by saying he's a sea slug, or something like that. Sometimes they throw around the insult bullfish as well, which I find kind of funny. In the more action-packed racing scenes, I find the dialogue is a little less interesting and can be repetitive sometimes. Kordo likes to say punch it a lot, I've noticed. And a lot of the time it will just be her and whoever she's competing against tossing snarky comments back and forth to each other as they race to the finish. But there's still some interesting bits and some moments that might come as a surprise, and overall the writers for this show have made a respectable effort. The music is just fine. I don't think there's much remarkable about it. Most of the show's music either sounds like a dramatic film score during the race scenes, or sometimes there'll be an adventurous, jungly theme playing in the background, but that's about it. The intro theme is short and sweet, and can be quite an earworm, and I guess that's what the producers were aiming for. I honestly don't have a whole lot to say about the music. It's adequate, I'll give it that. I do wish there was a bit more going on with it though, like maybe a specific scene with a memorable, epic song that goes along with it, maybe. And I also want to talk about the voice acting. I don't have much to say about it, but I will offer my input. I watched the English dub for this show, so I'll only be focusing on the English voice cast. Most of the characters have great, recognisable and fitting voices. My personal favourites are the voice talents of Jet Walker, who voices Korto, Oggy Banks, who voices Enki, Leslie Lipkins, who voices Flora, Tiana Camacho, who voices Debbie, and whoever voices Wyatt Whale. I cannot for the life of me find who the voice actor for this guy is. I've searched high and low across the internet and there is absolutely no information out there on him. In fact, there's almost no information on most of the voice cast for this show, and that is owed to its obscurity. And I want to dive into this a bit. I've covered the show's elements, and now would be a good time to progress into the next chapter of this essay. My personal thoughts, ideas, suggestions, criticisms, and broader commentary. Starting with addressing the show's obscurity. It interests me, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. As it stands right now, a web search of this show won't return a lot of results. In fact, searching droners is likely to turn up results for real-life drone racing, as well as Liam Vickers' Murder Drones series, which I find funny. There are barely any discussions about the show, and information is scarce. We've got a half-baked Wikipedia page, which has vandalism and typos that haven't been fixed in weeks, a dead wiki, and almost nothing on YouTube aside from a couple of trailers from a few years ago, and most videos about the show have less than 20,000 views. Even the first trailer, after 4 years, has only amassed 50,000 views, which is very small for an official video showcasing a full-scale production. All of this makes me ask myself, why is this show so unknown? I'm honestly stunned this show isn't more well known. I have some theories as to why the show has had limited success with achieving popularity. One of them is that I believe this show is a victim of an oversaturation effect we are seeing in the world. There are so many new series, new music, new games, new media and ideas being made every year. And there is so much that exists now that it's impossible to keep up with it all. And as such, there are now entire shows and franchises that are becoming lost in the static. It's a sad observation because there are some real gems out there that aren't getting the recognition they deserve, simply because there's just so much competition now. And I'm very glad I found this show. I can't exactly remember how I found it, but the first thing that drew me towards it was the admirable animation the show has to offer. It really is a hidden gem and it deserves way more recognition, and more people should know about it. And I would like to hope I can bring awareness to it by making this video. Some final closing notes I want to make for this video, and some suggestions I'd like to make. I wouldn't mind if there were some filler episodes, with no racing and more focus on the characters' social lives. I'd even be interested in some episodes without the Tikis at all, and instead focused on the specific team. There are so many interesting and cool characters, and I really think there is so much that can be done with them. I'd love to see that. I guess this next point is a bit more of a criticism I have. It feels like a lot of things about this show aren't clearly explained. A lot of characters aren't really introduced, and all we know is that they're just there. We have to pick up the puzzle pieces and put them all together to figure out who's who and what's what. Some things will be mentioned, but sometimes they won't be elaborated further on. Over time, as you watch all the episodes, everything can be pieced together and it will make sense, but it takes some time. I'll admit when I first watched this, it felt like being thrown into the deep end. First episode I watched was Spider Circuit, and it's just like, whoa, suddenly drone racing, and then a feud with another team, though who I know nothing about. What's going on? And I should mention the episodes in this show are not in chronological order, like it doesn't matter which episode you watch, it's not in order, except for the last 2 episodes. Even if I watched the very first episode, the Pai Pai race, if I watched that first, I think I'd still be just as confused. Like it wouldn't have made much of a difference what episode I watched first, is what I'm trying to get at. And I think that's about all I have to say with regards to the ideas and suggestions I have for this show. There may be more I can think of, but those ones I just covered are the main ones that spring to mind. I think this pretty much sums up my review for Jonas. Overall, a wonderful show. Everyone who worked on this has truly outdone themselves. Everything looks so polished and exciting to see, with a great story and cute characters to boot. I'd even go as far as to say this is one of my favourite cartoons, and coming from me, someone who's watched their fair share of cartoons over the years, that's saying a lot. One final thing, I promise. Looking around on the internet, I've heard this show has a 2nd season, and it's currently airing on French television, but I haven't been able to find anything else on it. I'm really hoping I'll get to see it someday, and I hope we'll have an English dub too. It looks like this new season will introduce new characters, teams, racetracks, and a lot more story. I'm very much looking forward to watching all of it when I can. Give this show a chance. I think you're going to like it.